we are having a heavy debate right now. Are the Brainbusters one of the top four tag teams of the golden era in the WWF? We'll discuss it next on Turnbuckle Talk.
They think they got the answers. I change the question.
Talk about your Psalms. Talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, I just whipped your ass.
I will come away with the championship belt and see new horizons.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this contest and new Intercontinental Champion.
Fellas, we are back here on Turnbuckle Talk. I am joined by Payne Gretzky, the great one, by the mouth EJ below, and then of course, you know me as Charlie Hustle. Good to be back with you boys.
Good to be here.
Listen, man, as everyone tuned in knows, we're focused specifically on the golden age of WWF. That's 1982 to 1992. Before you even get into the content today, make sure you follow, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe to the content. This is really the greatest period of wrestling, and we have so much fun doing these for you guys. We're going to continue to do so. And I think today's journey, we're going to walk down the greatest tag teams ever to be assembled from that decade of a time period. Let's take it right from the top. EJ, I'm going to throw it to you first, and we're going to start with the Brainbusters. Now, normally how we do our top fours is we throw in a group of 9 or so individuals for discussion, and we narrow this thing down to the final 4. Is the Brainbusters a very valuable entry to you as we start this thing off, or do you kind of see them, hey, they're going to get out of here rather quickly?
I would think they probably slide out of it, although, you know, they do have some nice, they have a nice finisher. I don't know. It's just the reception of the Brainbusters. Didn't like the name either, you know, even though these are really horsemen. But anytime you're with Heenan, you're gonna always have a chance. I think they are one of the better. They're one of the better ones, but it depends on how you look at it. Like if you're looking for technical wrestling, probably not. You know, but you know, they feel like honky to me. When we had spoken about the Intercontinental, where it's like, did they always win because of their finisher against top-notch competition? I mean, they'll beat those superstars of wrestling stars, wrestling challenge stars with the was it called the Brainbuster? I forgot that finisher was like one. There were.
Oh, it was the Brainbuster, no? The finisher.
Where they kind of pile driver with extra.
Which, by the way, is a very scary move. I'm not sure. Yeah. You kidding me? Which is why it's been outlawed. Yeah, it's been outlawed. Yeah, stop.
So I mean, for that, I think they make the list. I think they drop out, even though I'm kind of it eludes me some of the champions that probably could take them out.
I have them dropping out. I hated the name. I hated that I feel like it tarnished them or tarnished their legacy as horsemen becoming the Brainbusters. Like, that was so stupid. And then if I'm not mistaken, because Flair came over a couple times, he came to WWF, then he went back, then he came back. But had they done it right and timed it right, they could have teamed Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson right back up with Flair and brought the 4 Horsemen. Missed opportunity there. So I completely hated the Brainbusters for that, so I don't have them in my top 4.
You know, I think the thing about it is, and the Brainbusters was a cheesy spinoff of Bobby the Brain Heenan, because they knew they were going to put him with the Brain. So that's kind of a cheesy spinoff of what they did there. You know, you guys make me wonder if Luger came 4 years later. So it wasn't Luger. Was it Wyndham who was already there on the WWF roster? They had enough for the Horsemen.
They did. I mean, wasn't Kurt Hennig had been in there at one point too?
Yeah, so but there was a time. there was a time where the Horsemen started to get watered down, and everybody became a Horseman.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh, what's going on here? So, but there could have been a legitimate carryover to the WWF. But again, leaving that to the side, their production in the ring was still very solid. And I disagree with EJ. Arn Anderson, very underrated. And there were both, and Tully Blanchard, both these guys were technically sound.
Yeah, they were good. I think in the WCW, I used to see them more as showmen, like especially Tully, because they kind of brought him out like a $1 Million Man. Like he was rich, he had the fur coats. I was like, oh, okay. And they had him in limousines on their little pre-show. So I was like, this is interesting. You know, I caught a few of those. So it's like, okay, Tully, they're trying to build him up like that, but they never quite tried to emulate that in the WWF, and it kind of soured me on the WWF a little bit.
Yeah. Well, they will hold a spot right now at number 1 on our list, but that might be very short range as we now add Strike Force to the conversation. Tito Santana, Rick Martel, 152 days with the tag team straps. Where are you guys putting them as it relates to the brain busters on our list?
For me, I put them over the brain busters, and this is why. Because when I think of tag teams, I think of the solo star power outside of the tag team as well, right? You have a former Intercontinental Champion, which we discussed on a previous episode, Tito Santana, and then the future model Rick Martel was a great solo performer in his own right, and you can see he trained with Tito, and the heel turn story for Rick Martel in that was amazing. And I think it's in that era, around that time, it was probably a close second. It's not close, a distant second to when Shawn Michaels turned on Marty Jannetty.
And just so you guys know in YouTube land, don't worry, Turnbuckle Talk will take care of that, as we will discuss the greatest heel turns in WWF history. So you guys stay tuned for that content as well. I guess the thing with Strike Force is we've talked about it multiple times on this content. I'm not the best with baby faces. They never turn me on. And there were other great tag champions around this time to where if someone doesn't bring up Strike Force, I can forget about them. You know?
Yeah.
Do I have them ahead of the Brain Busters? Yes.
That's interesting.
I do.
So a forgettable ahead of okay.
Yeah. I think their success early really helped establish the tag team in those golden eras. We don't get this without Strike Force and the next team that we're going to mention. You know, those kind of foundational pieces were important.
I actually thought of Martel as the glue more than Tito. Martel, I remember WrestleMania 3, so you know, Can-Am connection. They tried to get something going with Martel early on. It was Tom Zink with that one, but something, you know, something to kind of think about in my head is, okay, I like when I see tag teams have contrasting styles. So
really?
So Tito, I looked at as a little bit more methodical or slower, even though in his earlier days he's a little quicker and spicy, you know. But probably because of all those tacos and chiles he's eating in Mexico. You know, Chico Santana can be a little spicy, but I think Martel, whenever he jumped in there, reminded me of like he's just this little Tasmanian devil. You come in and he's just like he's hitting his head and he's just like he's just coming in there for different speed variants. So I liked Martel in those. And so him heel turning kind of shocked me a little bit. But Tito, I never expected to ever be a heel. Like Tito, we never look at him and say, could he be a heel? I don't even know if he'd be a good heel. He doesn't feel like he would play it well. So
Turnbuckle Talk listeners, do not, to EJ's point, do not confuse Rick Martel with Marty Jannetty. Rick Martel can carry a match. Marty Jannetty cannot. And you see that when Rick Martel gets into these tag matches and Tito's falling out outside the ring someplace, Rick Martel holds his own quite often as a member of Strike Force.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and throw them above the Brain Busters in our existing list. But you don't get the Strike Force in the golden age of wrestling without our next entry, the Dream Team. Greg Valentine, Brutus Beefcake. Listen, 226 days with the straps. That matters. That matters.
Yeah.
Where are you putting them?
Yeah.
Where are you putting them?
I put them as number one. I love Beefcake and Hammer as heels. Of course, Hammer's going to be known as a perpetual heel, but Beefcake turned face, and I think that's when his career just started to go down. He's not a good face at all. He's a little over the top with a little bit of the promos, with the cheesiness, but as a heel, I think it works. And so they, having his their manager, I think the Dream Team was one of the better ones. I don't see them as contrasting style, but I do think Hammer is underrated as both a partner and a singles competitor. I think is very underrated. He has some technical ability to him, although not quite as flexible, but can be technical. His chops, some of the best I've ever heard and seen. I mean, I hear that ricochet throughout the stadium all the time. So, and he could sit there and be the only move in his own match, and I'd be interested. And I'm like, and then turn that little shin guard over for the figure four at the right time where the referee's not looking. It's like, it's classic. It's best. It's the best thing. I think they're one of the best.
Yeah, and to harp on EJ's point, those chops in the figure four, the only person that did those better was probably Ric Flair.
Match between the two, man.
Oh, yeah.
And they both fall the same, too.
Right.
Face first.
So a little known fact, or really heavy wrestling fans might know that Greg the Hammer Valentine was WWF's answer for Ric Flair. That's the same figure four. That's the chops, the blonde hair, the fabulous chops, right? But that tag team, the Dream Team, could equally just have been known as Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, two individual wrestlers that work very well together.
Oh, well, good point.
Heel Beefcake is what's the greater sign that you use in math? 4, 5, 10 greater signs in Face Beefcake. Face Beefcake was a waste of time and energy, and it should have never happened. He should have just retired as a heel.
Agreed. Okay, so we're going to bump the Dream Team to the top of our existing list with Strike Force and the Brain Busters still remaining on the list until we start to add more of these entities. The next entity we're going to add here, let's pause. And we would be remiss if we didn't give a special shout out to Mr. Fuji and Mr. Seattle. So the first ever, not ever, but first tag teams of the golden era, that 1982 year that we're starting with. And I bring them up to say, we've spoken before when we do these lists. You have to fight somebody to be in the conversation. Mr. Fuji, obviously we know goes on to be a legendary manager. He held those straps 258 days against the Moondogs And listen, I know we laugh and joke about Moondog Spot now. You know, the Moondogs in their prime were serious contenders, right? The Wild Samoans and the aforementioned Rick Martel and Tony Garea. They were fighting some people back in these days. So I don't want to overlook the OGs, the people who were there in 82. They won't make our list here for this conversation, but they do deserve an honorable mention. One more honorable mention I do want to throw out here really quickly. The Soul Patrol. Again, before our era here, right? These guys were back in the 70s. Rocky Johnson, Tony Atlas, salute to those guys.
Yeah,
you know what I
and
mean?
the first black tag team
Yeah.
in WWF history. So
Absolutely. So we'll be remiss if we didn't shout those guys out. Let's throw another tag team back into the discussion, and let's not get any further than Money Incorporated.
You know, they're not as high on my list. Not as high in this list with the current players that we have in there.
164 days with the straps.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't. It didn't move me. How about that? There's some champions in there that have held it for a good amount of time, but I'm like, probably like your Strike Force. It's just, it's nice. Money Inc. Nice name for who the two are. But forgettable to me. And I think another thing is that I need a name, a moniker. Do not give me Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson as a tag team name. Like give me a name. Make a name, put a little bit more effort and give me a name for a tag team. That's just a throw in there. It's like I hate tag teams that are just mentioned as the two individuals. I don't know. That's just a personal thing. Not a big deal, but
Payne, where are you?
I'm with EJ. It didn't move me. It's like when you have what's the lady's name that got in trouble? I forget what her name was, but little old white lady. She made fried chicken. Whatever her name was. You get her fried chicken, and Paula Dean. You get her fried chicken, and she uses actual table salt and black pepper in it. But then you go down the street to Miss Barbara's house, and she got the seasoning salt, she got the black pepper, she got the garlic powder in there, right? That moves you. Get Paula Dean's fried chicken out of here, and that's what Money Inc.'s title reign was. Paula Dean's fried chicken.
Oh, geez.
Okay, so Money Inc. is now officially 4th on the list. So that's interesting. You guys discount the title reign. I thought that was pretty impressive. Let's look at that 4. Let's add in a wild card. Nasty Boys, 1991.
Look, they're another one that I don't know. They're not bad. My problem with them is, again, I never got into them. I never got into the Nasty Boys. They tried to put them over the Hearts and all. I never got into them. It just didn't, to me, the storyline, the whole, it didn't move me. Two guys with what did they have, Mohawks, and one with black hair, one with blonde hair. What was it? I can't remember the name. Knobs and Sags. I'm like, okay, listen, what is that? So they can get out of here. They could take hitchhike on a train. They can hitchhike the long way out of here. Walk your ass out of here. Don't come back. No quick ride, no quick trip. Walk your ass. Actually, walk through the ocean. I drown if I fall. I care. Get them out of here. The Nasty Boys, man. Get them out of here.
I'm with EJ on this one. They didn't move me. It felt very cartoonish. It felt like they were trying to capitalize off of the popularity of, and everybody's going to remember this, the Garbage Pail Kids. They're picking their noses and wiping their opponents. They're spitting in their jacket. They're digging in their asses. Like, get them the fuck out of here. I might actually really want to fight you if you do that shit to me in a wrestling ring.
Okay, so the Nasty Boys are not going to move you. They're not going to enter our top 4.
They're not even going to enter.
Here.
Sorry.
But this team will. 91, 92. Oh, what a rush.
Oh,
the Legion of Doom. Payne, let's start with you.
I struggle with this because Legion of Doom is one of the greatest tag teams ever, right? But their run in WWF wasn't what it was in NWA.
True.
They definitely make this top 4. And where we have it, what we have right now, I have them at number 1.
Wow. Okay.
Top 4. But yeah, it just wasn't. WWF LOD and NWA LOD are night and day.
Here's what I will say before I pass it to EJ is that Payne, he's not often wrong in wrestling. He's wrong a lot of other places, but not in wrestling. He's wrong here. LOD is not equal to the Road Warriors. And that's the conversation you got to have when you're talking about LOD. Is the Road Warriors were absolutely unmatched, dominant in every way. LOD, they got WWF-ized, if you know what that means, right?
Yeah.
They became more family friendly. They became more kid centric. That oh what a rush became sexy with the WWF. It was scary when they were the Road Warriors. It's a different thing. BJ?
Yeah, there's nothing more really to add for them. The Road Warriors were really a team I paid to watch. LOD, I got tired of them always matching them up. It always felt like they kept matching them up with the Orient Express. I got tired of that crap. I was like, why are we matching them up with 2 wrestlers who will never win a car against any opponent, any real opponent? Anyone can beat a jobber. Geez, they used to win those wrestling challenges, but against the Road Warriors, against anybody else with any kind of cash, even the Rockers, Orient Express, I always used to hear that, it just, or see that on TV. I'm like, oh, who they facing again in Saturday Night Main Event? Oh gosh, again.
Yeah, again, it's either Orient Express or it's John Smith and Barry Horowitz.
Yeah. Iron Mike Sharp. You got all these clowns. Mike Sharp. You got what was his name? The guy that ended up the Brooklyn Brawler. Like, come on, man. Get these guys,
You know something, with that in mind, and I know Payne wants to skyrocket them to the top of our list. I put them behind the Dream Team. Something, the Dream Team, they were really about that life. I really respected them. I really loved Johnny Valiant. I'm gonna leave the Dream Team personally at 1. LOD will fall into 2. Of course, they're ahead of Strikeforce.
You won't get any argument from me for that. I mean, I was battling with 1 or 2, but I mean, I'm a big LOD/Road Warriors fan, so that's why I was like, I got to put them at 1. But I could definitely see them being 2 on this list right now too.
Okay. EJ, you comfortable with LOD at 2? It matters because the next 3 we enter are heavy hitters. And the lower you are on this list, the more likely you are to fall off.
What are we dealing with? Dream Team, Strikeforce?
Dream Team, Strikeforce, Brain Busters, Money Inc.
I think Money Inc. probably drops out right now.
That's fair.
LOD, I think, is ahead of Money Inc., but they're about to get dropped out. You're going to name some other ones who, I mean, as a big one, who's great in singles card, who I know you're going to name in here. They're going to instantly knock them out. If not them, the other counterparts that look like these guys. But
There's some monsters coming.
Continue.
So, but it's valuable. It's important to note. Are you putting LOD ahead of Strike Force? Because then that puts LOD at least in the 2 spot.
No, they're not ahead of Strike Force.
Oh,
not LOD. Not when we're talking about WWF.
That's important.
Which is the topic here. They're not ahead of Strike Force.
So, Mr. Wizard, here's what I want you to do for me. We're gonna put the Dream Team at 1. We're gonna put. I struggle with this stuff. Give me.
Don't worry. Well,
okay. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you remember who LOD beat for the straps? If you remember,
no,
I put them at 2.
I actually don't at the moment. I'm trying to think, and I don't think.
Mr. Wizard, put Strike Force at 2. LOD will be 3. Money Inc. Brainbusters. Brainbusters at 4. Now we dive in because now we've got some monsters coming. Let's go with one of the most obvious. Here comes the Axe. Here comes the Smasher. It's Demolition. Walking Disaster. 478 days consecutive with the straps. One of the longest reigns of all time as it relates to WWF Tag Team Champions. Obviously, they're going to bump Brainbusters. I feel like they bump Strike Force. So now the conversation is where do they land with LOD? Ironic that we're comparing LOD with Demolition Pain.
Yeah. And I'm biased here, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Demolition is my favorite tag team of all time.
Really?
They shoot to number 1.
Wow!
Longest reign.
Huh?
They were, and I'm not afraid to admit this, a ripoff of War Warriors, right? But they did put their own spin on it with the masks coming in, and their finishing move was a little different. And they were just real big, tough. They look like bikers, right? Like Hawk and Animal were just 2 jacked dudes that have just beat the hell out of you with shoulder pads on, right? So, I definitely, on this list that we have now, I have them. I have Demolition. I'm still going to put LOD 2 on my list.
I had a Dream Team, huh?
Wow! It's a bias thing with that for me. So, LOD, Dream Team can be interchangeable at 2 for me, and then who do we have?
The Brainbusters.
Brainbusters.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. No. So now we're sitting here with Demolition into the conversation. Dream Team is still in the conversation. LOD is in the conversation, and Strike Force makes up the 4th. That means the Brainbusters are out.
Gone, yeah.
Oh,
that's
a tough one. Yeah.
I
think I'm okay with it. You know, we can talk jockey. We could talk about the order of it. Right now, I don't care about the order, but yeah, that looks like the right 4.
You will like when we start adding these entities, that order becomes important.
Yeah, I know some of these are going to get knocked out. You know, some of these are going to get knocked out. I'm still anticipating a few. So
we've got 3 more coming, just so that we are in alignment here. One of them is the British Bulldogs, Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith, Matilda, in those ages, right? These were great times. Where do they fall in this conversation, EJ? Let's start with you.
The British Bulldogs will enter into the top 4 and outgo the Busters. I mean, look.
No, the Busters are already gone.
Oh, the Busters are gone.
Strike Force is out. Strike Force LOD is on that teeter. Remember, see, I told you that order didn't matter.
Strike Force is out. LOD is soon to be out, but Strike Force is out. Yeah, British Bulldogs. again, my talk is always contrasting styles. You got the big power guy in Davey Boy. That power slam was nice. Although I wasn't a big fan of Davey Boy, my favorite guy, one of my favorite wrestlers in this era was Dynamite Kid. That snap suplex was one of the best I ever seen.
Mhm.
I used to gear up and wait during the match. When that match was set up, I'm like, I can't wait for that snap suplex.
Yeah.
That's all I look for. I'm like, oh, snap suplex. And I thought he executed it well. I thought it could be a finisher, but, I think them two as a tag team, I think, are underrated. They did in their later part of this era started to help put some guys over, which made sense. And their rivalry with the one color foundation will just that was classic. And like I said, all of these probably to get bounced once we throw in that name in there. But yeah, Demolition, I think Pain, I'm with you. I think I put them number one right now in this list.
God, I can't believe you guys got the
Which is
one.
weird because I always thought they were a knockoff of the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
Okay, the Road Warriors. LOD was a knockoff of the Road Warriors as well. So I mean, get them the hell out of here with that too. But do we ever add the third Demolition member?
No, we don't.
It crushed the fuck out.
Yeah, no, we don't talk. We don't talk about that.
I hated that.
We don't acknowledge that. We don't acknowledge that. Pain, you're comfortable with the Bulldogs replacing Strike Force, I imagine.
Absolutely. Like I said, I take into account with tag teams a lot of times solo success. Davey Boy went on to be an IC champ and had a couple of runs to the chip.
Yeah, that's
he was always in the mix at one point.
Didn't he hold the IC straps?
Yeah, he did.
At one point?
Yeah. So it was right before that. It was that little funny time between the Golden Era and the Attitude Era when it was transitioning, right? So it was
As a matter of fact, that was a feud with the Hitman over in London, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
where that was,
and that was part of the creation of D-Generation Expo. We'll get that. We're not focusing on that right now, but so the British Bulldogs, and like I said before in one of our other episodes, I believe Dynamite Kid could have been a great.
I view him as I think he could have done that. Pain
and that just injuries killed him.
Because he's like Benoit to me. It's like
that's what I was going to say.
Benoit had that snap suplex too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, those guys. Yeah, they reminded me of each other. He's just an older version of Benoit, and if he didn't get hurt, Dynamite, then I think I don't know. We never know if he could have been on that track.
Yeah, easily could have been on as part of that IC track for sure, and just made a place there. We've got two more entries coming into this conversation. Mr. Wizard, put us back up on the screen and let's keep the people engaged on what we have as our list here. Right now, unfortunately, we have Demolition sitting at the top of that list, which is a travesty to me. Now, here's the question. Are you guys putting the Bulldogs ahead of the Dream Team? Who, by the way, they were feuding with for the straps.
How long did Dream Team hold it versus Bulldogs?
Dream Team 226. I don't have a date for the Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs.
I don't think the Bulldogs held it as long. But I think they
What am
have
I
more. I think they have a couple reigns though.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. They lost it and got them back.
Yeah, this is when you start getting into the dangerous Danny Davis eras. And involved him of the straps.
I
still put the Dream Team at number 2.
I'll leave the Dream Team.
I'm not going to argue.
Okay. So, Mr. Wizard, Demolition is 1. The Dream Team is 2. The British Bulldogs are 3. LOD is 4. We've got 2 more coming. I'm going to give you one you probably forgot about. Actually, I've got 3 more coming. The first, I don't know if they're going to enter the conversation, but I think they have to get the mention. The Natural Disaster.
Wow.
I think they get the mention. Now they might not knock out LOD, but I think we have to mention them, no?
Yeah.
I think so. Aren't they, they're a little bit later version of Twin Towers. Now, the Twin Towers, they never held the straps, or did they? Did they at all ever? Because Twin Towers, iconically, because they also brought into that storyline Hogan and Macho, the Mega Power. Listen, Twin Towers, it's sad if they didn't get the straps. But so they won't be in this list if they never had it. So
Right.
Earthquake and Typhoon, listen, to me, they're just gimmicks, but the gimmicks that would in real life would be almost impossible to beat. I don't see how any team really could have ever beaten them.
Mhm.
They're just too. What they weigh 1,000 pounds? No, I'm sure it's not that, but it's like 8, 9.
Damn near, yeah.
Yeah, easy.
I mean, I Earthquake to me was the star of the group, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
To me, Typhoon, hit or miss. You
Yeah.
know, for those fans that don't know how he got into it, I think he was a guy in the stands that was watching the match, and then somebody called him out or something to come down to the ring. I forgot what it was, what the storyline was, but that's how he came into the wrestling. But Typhoon went. I don't know. I don't even know how long they held it. They're not memorable to me as far as do great matches between the natural disasters and who, like, so
Right. Good point.
but on paper they're like two Andre the Giant sitting there. It's like, or King Kong Bundy and Andre. It's like, oh, okay, how do you really beat them?
So speaking of that, Pain, before we dive into our last two, I did want to make a couple of honorable mentions. The tag team circuit is one of my favorite circuits in wrestling. And if you do a storyline right in the tag team circuit, it could go 5 years if you really do it right, right? And I think some of these are in my honorable mention because they either didn't end up with the straps or because they weren't really like a long-term tag team. They were just something for the moment, right? So let me give you these. Power and Glory. So let me explain to you about Power and Glory. They had the best finisher of tag teams of all time. There was a suplex off the top rope, and then Roma came from the other turnbuckle. YouTube, if you don't do anything else after you watch this video, go YouTube Power and Glory's finisher. It's the best that's ever been done for tag teams in WWF. Another team I wanted to give an honorable mention to before we dive into our last two, the Colossal Connection under the Bobby the Brain Heenan, Andre the Giant, and Haku. They actually held the straps.
Yeah.
But they just get lost in the shuffle because Andre was fading at the back of his career at this point. They never, I don't think I ever saw them at a pay-per-view. So they were kind of one of those tag teams, much like we mentioned with Ricky Steamboat. They were great to get other people over, but they never had a thing written around them. It might have been a drop the ball opportunity there. And then the last honorable mention I want to give here, again, we could discuss their eligibility in this conversation, but the Mega Powers. For a time there, they were super hot. They were super over. And that matters in wrestling, right? Your pop ability matters in wrestling. Of course, they were the two biggest entities at the time, smashed together for a common purpose. But they did have a lot of tag matches leading up to, which is why you heard me mention Money Inc. There were a lot of things happening.
Twin Towers.
Yeah.
The Twin Towers.
There are a lot of things going on that we appreciated Mega Powers for. Let's dive into the last two. Pain, we know that we're sitting on Demolition. We know that we're sitting on the Dream Team. We know that we're sitting on the British Bulldogs, and the LOD still sits at 4. I want to give you something maybe off the cuff. We know the Foundation is coming. We know they're coming. We get it. Before we get to the Foundation, let me insert the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov to the conversation. And if you are not a Golden Age WWF fan, go back and watch this tag team. There was never a tag team that had a bigger pop than these guys. Payne?
You know what? So let me just start off by saying this 4 we have right now is a strong 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sheik and Nikolai, they had, how long was their title reign?
They had 2 different title reigns. I don't have the dates for them, but they had at least 2.
I don't remember either of them being particularly lengthy or memorable matches from it. But then again, I don't remember any memorable LOD matches either. So I'm going to go ahead and be bold and bump LOD off this list because, as I've stated before, LOD is not the Road Warriors from WCW. I mean, they're the same guys, but it's not the same. It's not the same pop, like you said.
EJ, can you greenlight bumping LOD out and moving Sheik and Volkov in?
I don't know if they held it long enough. I think their reign was maybe a few months. Although their storyline, I don't know how much stock people put on world events playing into the storylines of the wrestling events. So, they represent what America is trying to be the anti of. So I think their star power for that reason makes it where they come into this list. It's for iconic reasons. And that's more of it than the actual wrestling prowess.
It is
of the 2. Nikolai, big name in this time frame.
Huge name.
Starts to wane off as that era starts to wind down. They started making comical cards for him. I got annoyed with that. Teaming him up with Boris Zukov and fighting the Hart Foundation a number of times, the Bolsheviks. But yeah, I think I don't know if I can put them above LOD personally. So to spare Payne the tears, for his team, I probably would keep LOD. I'm gonna give you that lifeline, phone a friend here, and I'm saving the damn LOD for you there, Payne.
Well, luckily there's 3 of us here, and I get to be a tiebreaker. Russia number 1, Iran number 1.
Yeah.
Classic line, WrestleMania 2. These guys are going to bump LOD.
What the heck?
Not only because here's why. They carried the tag team region for 3 years. Right? And Vince built cards around them because they had so much heat. And that has value. And so LOD, the truth of the matter is, listen, the LOD pop is a term in wrestling, right? That's a real term. It matters. LOD's pop, legendary, but it started with Sheik and Volkov. They were getting them first. So, with that said, I bump Mr. Wizard. Demolition still sits at number 1. The Dream Team, I have at 2. The Bulldogs are at 3. We drop LOD. We put in Sheik and Volkov. And now, gentlemen, I give you the Heart.
Well, the short reign of Nikolai and the Sheik. I mean, just as long as how long they held the straps. Look, Hart Foundation, you can't name in the golden era any tag team without mentioning the Hearts. Come on. All 3 members of the Hearts, including the manager with the name Hart, nice, very catchy. Jim the Anvil Neidhart, his style, power, bruising, the technician of Bret Hart. And I think there was some of the best heels that I ever saw as a tag team, better than faces. Great, one of the great heels. They cheated when they needed to. They were able to win fair and square when they needed to. And that finisher, one of my favorites. The Heartline, just one of it's just. I think that's they might catapult to number one. But they're in the list as far as I'm concerned.
Payne, I'm gonna go to you for the finale and wrap this up. I think where I'm gonna go is I'm going to put Heart Foundation as the number one tag team. They shoot to the top of the list. Here's why. Only they, in the aforementioned Demolition, can play babyface and heel equally as great. We talked about the Dream Team. We talked about the Bulldogs. Neither one of them crossed over the fence like those two teams did. And now we're talking about excellence of execution. Pardon the pun there. But Demolition got in the ring and beat people up. Heart Foundation actually wrestled guys. And I appreciate that sometimes. You know what I mean? Is the Heartline or eventually the Heart Attack better than Demolition's finisher? Yes. Again, because they were in the same time period, they kind of wrestled the same guys. So we can't say that Demolition fought different competition. They're all around the same time period. Although I will respect the fact that Heart Foundation had to go through earlier renditions of the Dream Team, one of our top 4 finishers here, right? But of course, Demolition had to go through LOD. They had to go through, I think the road for the Hard Dot Foundation was a little bit rougher. That's why I put them at the top of the list. Where do you
go? So, of course, Heart Foundation bumps out Nikolai and Iron Sheik, right? I still keep Demolition number 1. I have Heart Foundation 2, Dream Team 3, and who was our 4th? LOD?
Bulldogs.
Bulldogs 4. Okay. And I'm fine with that. And here's why I keep Demolition as number 1. Yes, they beat up people. They weren't as technically sound as those guys. They were very intimidating. They were bruisers. And Vince eventually, he started building the tag team division to rival them. Don't forget Powers of Pain. Don't forget bringing in LOD, Natural Disasters. These are really big tag teams to try to rival Demolition and make them look not so superhuman, right? But to EJ's point, the Heart contrasting styles, you got Ambrose's power, you got Hart's speed and technical ability, right? So that, to me, probably would make the perfect tag team. But you got, again, I'm biased, 1. And 2, Demolition's reign was, I think, longer than the Heart Foundation.
Yeah.
And they all went through the same competition.
True.
And yeah, I mean, it's just that simple for me. You know who we didn't mention here, and they didn't have a title reign, but
don't you do it! Don't you do it!
We'd be remiss to not mention the Bushwhackers.
Oh no! Are you kidding me?
I mean, you're talking tag team wrestling. They were in the golden era. They were very popular tag team.
I'm out.
Don't leave.
You don't rank them. You don't rank them. Of course, they don't sniff.
Yeah, don't leave. Come back.
But you gotta mention them. You have to mention them.
I think. Listen, I think because you mentioned the Bushwhackers, there is one legitimate tag team that we didn't mention, but it's just for the reason that they didn't hold the straps officially, according to the WWF. This is the case where tag team specialists, the Rockers, and we could watch them every Saturday morning. But the truth is, This list is for the best tag team champions of all time.
Yeah.
And the WWF says the Rockers never held the straps. Although fans of the Golden Era do know that there was one night at the Boston Garden where the Rockers did in fact beat the Hart Foundation for the straps. That was never acknowledged by the WWF. The Hart Foundation were the champions the next day, and we move on from there. So we do have to mention the Rockers.
They had a. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying the Rockers should have won the straps at one point, but if they did that, we'd have no HBK. So,
well, maybe not. Because Hart Foundation, Bret Hart has won the tag and the whole the big enchilada as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Davey Boy Smith has won a singles title, IC. And although the Rockers, they did have an iconic match, 3-fall match with the Hart Foundation. I'll never forget. Not on a it was on a Saturday night's main event, but it was pretty special. One of the falls was like either count out or disqualification. So it just there was one of those where it was a title match with Hart Foundation and I think it was Bulldogs. And an early fall was disqualification. So the other two falls didn't even matter. No change of hands was going to happen with the belts.
Mm-hmm.
So, those 3-fall matches. Anyway.
Well, we appreciate you guys tuning into Turnbuckle Talk as always. And today we just wrapped up a very riveting discussion about the greatest golden era tag teams in WWF history. As always, like, follow, subscribe to the page. We have upcoming the greatest golden era heavyweight champion of the world. That's additional content coming to you guys very soon. And that's in addition to our spectacular run that we're doing with our pay-per-view event reviews. So stay tuned to Turnbuckle Talk. We have some great content coming for you down the line. For Payne Gretzky, for the mouth, this is Charlie Hustle. We'll see you next time on Turnbuckle Talk.